You've probably assumed that once you become a US citizen, you're safe, that nothing can take that status away. But every single year, the government quietly reviews old naturalization files and reopens cases people thought were long behind them, sometimes decades later. And when they find serious problems, the result can be devastating. Citizenship is canceled, passports are revoked, and removal proceedings are started against people who built their entire life here in the United States. Hi, I'm immigration attorney Zaira Solano, founder of Solano Immigration Law Firm with 14 years practicing immigration law. And in this video, I'm going to break down the exact situations where denaturalization actually happens, what triggers it, and how the government investigates, and why these are increasing. Because once you understand the risks, then you can protect yourself. You can avoid the mistakes that raise red flags, and you can stay fully secure in your status as a U.S. citizen, starting with whether denaturalization is even really possible in the first place. Let's get right into it. Yes, you can lose your U.S. citizenship status, and the process is called denaturalization. Now, if you're born here in the United States, it is extremely rare and almost impossible for you to be stripped of your citizenship. But if you become a U.S. citizen through naturalization, meaning that you went through the lawful process and took the oath of allegiance, there are certain circumstances where the United States government can take it away. That's what we're unpacking right now. I want you to imagine this like building a house. If you built your house out of strong, honest materials, it's going to stand strong no matter what. But if there's a weak spot in the foundation, maybe a hidden crack or some faulty beams, it could come crashing down if someone discovers a problem later. Denaturalization is the government's way of fixing those faulty foundations, especially if fraud or deception was involved. So let's walk through real situations, the actual reasons where the government can and does try to denaturalize someone. I'm going to share the main grounds for denaturalization, real life examples, and what you can do if you're worried about your own status. The first and by far the most common cause of denaturalization is lying, hiding, or misrepresenting information in your citizenship application. This means putting false information on your N-400 form, during your interview, or even in the evidence you submit. Let's say you didn't disclose a past arrest back in your home country because you hoped no one would find out. Or you said you never left the United States for more than 6 months when you actually did. If the government finds out later, even years or decades after you become a citizen, they can go back, reopen your file, and start denaturalization proceedings against you. Here's a real example. There is a man from Bosnia living in the Midwest. He became a U.S. citizen after the war in his country. Years later, U.S. authorities learned that he had hidden his involvement in wartime atrocities on his application. Even though he'd been a citizen for over 20 years and raised a family here, the government brought in a denaturalization case against him. That's how serious that is. But it doesn't have to be something so dramatic. It could be a simple lie about your marital status, a criminal record, or even failing to disclose something you thought was harmless. The main point, if the government finds you got your citizenship by lying and not telling the full truth, they can try to take it anyway. Let's talk about membership in certain types of organizations. If at any point before or during your naturalization, you were involved with organizations that the United States considers to be hostile, subversive, or dangerous, and you did not report it on your application, this can be grounds for denaturalization. Think of it this way. The United States is very serious about national security. And if someone joined, supported, or even closely associated with a group like the Nazi Party, a terrorist organization, or any other group that advocated the violent overthrow of the U.S. government, and then became a citizen by hiding that fact, the government can and has taken away their citizenship. This isn't ancient history. In recent years, there have been denaturalization cases involving former Nazi guards found living in the United States decades after the war. When the Department of Justice found out, they removed their citizenship because they hid their past involvement and lied on their applications. But it doesn't have to be as dramatic as a war crime. Membership in certain groups, even if years ago, can be a serious problem even if you weren't honest about it. So if you were ever part of a controversial or dangerous group and left that off your citizenship application, it's possible that the government can use that as a reason for denaturalization. Let's move on to the next key ground, criminal activity, especially if it happened before you became a citizen and if you didn't disclose it or if it was discovered that you should have never been granted citizenship in the first place. For example, let's say you committed an aggravated felony or a crime involving moral turpitude before you became a citizen, but the government didn't find out until after. If you didn't honestly disclose it, or if the crime would have disqualified you from citizenship, the government can start a denaturalization process. A famous example of this involved a man from India. He applied for citizenship and didn't mention his previous fraud conviction, which should have made him ineligible to become a U.S. citizen. When immigration authorities discovered it years later, they were able to revoke his citizenship in court. But it isn't just about what happened before you became a citizen. If you committed fraud to get a green card in the first place, by entering into a sham marriage, for example, and that fraud is discovered after you've become a citizen, your citizenship is at risk. The government can argue that since you should have never gotten a green card and thus never qualified for citizenship, your passport is now invalid. This next one surprises a lot of people. There's an old law on the books that says that if you are ordered to testify before Congress about your naturalization and you refuse to do it within 10 years of becoming a citizen, the government can actually take your citizenship away. Now, this doesn't come up very much in real life, but it does exist. Think of it like a fail-safe for the government so they can investigate issues around how someone got their citizenship. It's rare, but if you're ever in a situation where Congress calls you in to talk about your naturalization, refusing to testify can have serious consequences. Let's say the government believes you got your citizenship through fraud, criminal activity, or hiding important information. How does denaturalization actually happen? It's a court process, not just a simple letter that you get in the mail. The Department of Justice has to file a lawsuit against you in federal court. You get to defend yourself, show your side of the story, bring in evidence, cross-examine witnesses. It's not automatic, and you have a right to fight the case. But if the judge decides the government is right, your citizenship is canceled. You go back to having the status that you had before you became a citizen, maybe a green card holder, maybe nothing at all. In some cases, if you lose your citizenship and the government thinks you shouldn't stay in the United States, they can start deportation proceedings against you. Remember, these cases are rare, but they're very real and they're getting more common. In recent years, there's been an entire task force at the Department of Justice dedicated to tracking down and prosecuting suspected fraud in naturalization cases. If you lose your citizenship through denaturalization, do you have any options? The answer is maybe, but it's tough. If the court made a mistake or if new evidence comes to light, you can appeal the decision just like any other court case, but there's no guarantee you'll win the appeal, and it could take years to resolve. There's also the possibility to reapply for citizenship in the future, but only if the government believes you were eligible in the first place and only lost it because of a technical error. Most people who are denaturalized for fraud will not be eligible to become citizens again. That's why being honest from the very beginning is so important. If you're watching this and thinking, could this happen to me? Take a deep breath. For most naturalized citizens, denaturalization is extremely rare. It almost always involves serious fraud, criminal activity, or hiding big facts about your past. But if you think that you might have made a mistake or left something on your application, no matter how small, talk to an immigration attorney as soon as possible. There are ways to fix some mistakes, but the longer that you wait, the harder it gets. And if you ever get a letter or a call from the Department of Justice about your citizenship status, don't panic. But don't try to fix it yourself. Get legal help right away. There are defenses available, and every case is unique. Let me share a final story that really drives this home. I worked once with a family where the father had become a U.S. citizen almost 18 years earlier. When he applied, he misunderstood a question about travel history. He didn't think a 6-month trip abroad counted as living outside the United States. Years later, his application for passport renewal triggered a review, and the government started asking questions. He was terrified. His whole family was here. His kids were in college, and he had no idea he'd made a mistake. It turned out to be an honest misunderstanding, but it took months of legal work to clear things up. In this case, we were able to prove that he did not intend to mislead anyone, and he kept his citizenship, but not everyone is so lucky. That's why it's so important to understand what is at stake and be completely truthful in every part of your immigration journey. Here are the things to remember. We walked through the main situations where someone can actually lose their citizenship through denaturalization, lying or hiding facts, membership in dangerous organizations, undisclosed criminal activity, and refusing to cooperate with investigations. While these cases are rare, they're serious and life-changing. If you've learned something today, do not miss my next video, The Hidden Traps for Green Card Holders. It covers common mistakes that can put your green card at risk, even if you think you're following all the rules. This one is a must-watch if you want to protect your future in the United States. See you over there.